Hello, everybody out there in my virtual class. This is Dr. Tedrin Lindsay. Welcome to Opera 101, Session 5. We've been discussing the different voice types that there are amongst opera singers, starting with sopranos. Then we delved into mezzo-sopranos, then into tenors, and now today we're going to discuss baritones, the middle voice between tenors and basses, whom we'll discuss next week. I thought that, as I did with sopranos and mezzo-sopranos, I would demonstrate the vocal range amongst these male voices. So if a tenor generally has a 2-octave range from a C to a high C, a baritone probably has about a third under that, an A flat to a high A flat, or maybe a low G to a high G. And basses usually top out at about an E flat or an F, but from their low F, many of them go way down the scale, deep, deep, deep. We'll discuss the basses next week. This week, let's discuss baritones, who have a warm, rich sound compared perhaps to the bright, clear sound that we came to hear from tenors. Baritones are often the comic figures in an opera, or often the villains. Sometimes they're the spurned lover. One of opera's most beloved baritones is a barber, the Barber of Seville. And in this rendition by Peter Mattei at the Metropolitan Opera, Figaro makes his big entrance with his whole shop full of barber equipment and what have you. Enjoy this performance of Largo al Factotum.
Nella città largo la presto bottega che la magia presto che bel vivere che bel piacere per un barbiere di qualità bravo Figaro bravissimo bravo fortunatissimo per verità bravo fortunatissimo per verità fortunatissimo per verità pronto per tutto, la notte e il giorno, sempre intorno di giusta, mil cuccagni e per un barbiere, vita più nobile non usina. Resti ripetti, la siete forti, al mio comando tutto qui sta. Resti ripetti, la siete forti, al mio comando tutto qui sta. Fai la risorsa, poi del mestiere, con la donnetta, col cavaliere, con la donnetta, tra-la-la-la-la-la, col cavaliere, tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la, che bel vivere, che bel piacere, per un barbiere di qualità tutto mi chiedono, tutto mi vogliono, donne e ragazzi, vecchie fanciulle, buona parrucca, presto la barba, buona sanguigna, presto biglietto, tutto mi chiedono, tutto mi vogliono, tutto mi chiedono, tutto mi vogliono, buona parrucca, presto la barba, presto biglietto, ecco Figaro, 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 Figaro. Ahimè, ahimè, che folla, una alla volta, per carità, per carità, per carità, una alla volta, una alla volta, una alla volta, per carità. Figaro, son qua. Ehi, Figaro, son qua, Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro su, Figaro giù, Figaro su, Figaro giù, pronto, prontissimi, son come palme, sono il fantomo della città, della città, della città, della città, della città. Bravo, Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, atti futuro, non mancherà, la 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 la, atti futuro, non mancherà, con il fatato nella città, con il fatato nella città, nella città.
Isn't that charming and fun? But you can hear that even for the lower baritone voice, Rossini still expected the same kind of agility and fireworks and coloratura and finesse that he expected from a soprano, a mezzo-soprano, or a tenor. So just because the voice is lower doesn't mean that it has to be heavier. And in fact, we designate baritone voices the same way as the others. Lyric baritones, dramatic baritones, and then there's a special category called bass baritones that we'll discuss in a bit. But for now, let's hear an example of a lyric baritone. This is one of the greatest who has ever graced the stage, the American baritone Thomas Hampson, singing one of his signature roles, Hamlet, or in French, Hamlet. And this is the scene where his father's ghost has just appeared to him and demanded that he take vengeance. Marvel at the beauty of this baritone voice, Thomas Hampson. The beautiful lyricism of that aria is the work of French composer Ambroise Thomas in his opera Hamlet, and that aria is called Ombre chère, Dear Ghost, Dear Shadow. And again, what a beautiful lyric sound Thomas Hampson has. It definitely has volume, but the size of the voice is not the same as a dramatic baritone. A dramatic baritone, you'll notice, has a much beefier sound, let's say, not heavier, just larger. In this scene, we're going to hear the great Russian bass Dmitry Forostovsky, a heartthrob for many in the 90s. And Vorostovsky sings in this example Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin. This is the aria from the end of Act 1, in which he spurns the advances of Tatiana, here played beautifully by Renee Fleming. You'll notice her acting. She doesn't even have to sing to be gorgeous. But Eugene Onegin is not being cruel to her, but he's being cold. And you'll see the effect that has on her soul and how beautifully Tchaikovsky portrayed that in the music. Please enjoy Dmitri Vorostovsky.
Домашним кругом я ограничить захотел. Когда мне быть отцом, супругом, приятный жребий повелел, то, верно, кроме вас одной, невесты не искал иной. Создан для блаженства, ему чужда душа моя. Напрасны ваши совершенства, их недостоин вовсе я. Поверьте совестям порукой, супружество нам будет мукой. Я сколько не любил бы вас, привыкнув, разлюблю подчас. Судите ж вы, какие розы нам заготовит Гименей. И, может быть, намного дней. Мечтами годом нет возврата, ах, нет возврата, не обновлю души моей. Я вас люблю, любовью брата, любовью брата, и, может быть, еще сильней. И, может быть, еще нежней, послушайте ж меня без гнева, сменит не раз молодая дева
So I think the difference between a lyric baritone and a dramatic baritone is quite clear from that example. I hope that this next example will make quite clear to you the difference between those two categories and a bass baritone. We've called the previous biggest voice categories Wagnerian, and really you could call this bass baritone, a Wagnerian voice as well. And the example we're going to hear is from Wagner. But bass baritone is a category all its own in which the singer has a particularly well-developed low register and is comfortable singing with ample volume down low, but also has the extension to sing up into maybe the baritone range, high G, high A flat. And in many ways, it's a tessitura category as much as it is a vocal size category. And we'll continue to explore this throughout today's talk. But for now, I want you to hear one of the greatest bass baritones of them all, the Welsh singer Bryn Terfel, who basically everything I looked at on YouTube for a possibility in this talk, the best version was by him. He is a magnificent singer, here singing the end of Die Valkyrie, the second of the Ring cycle, the magic fire music, as Wotan says farewell to Brunhilde and puts into motion the magic circle of fire around the boulder upon which she is sleeping.
Fand, als feuriger Tod, wie dann einst du mir standest, als schweifende Ruhe, wie ich dich fand, fand ich dich heut, heraufhabende Lohe. Umlodre mir feurig den Fels, Loga, Loga, hey, schreite das Feuer
So I hope that it's clear the weight of voice sort of determines the category of baritone that we're talking about. But even within the idea of a bass baritone, there may be different colors and sizes of voice. And so that again leads me to caution that it's not just a matter of the size of the voice, but the tessitura of the voice. We're now going to hear a deeper example of that. This is the American bass baritone James Morris, whom I consider actually the greatest Wotan of all time. We're going to hear him as Wotan, and you'll hear how he has such a lyric cast to his voice in this. The piece sits a little high, and so he sounds more like a baritone, maybe a dramatic baritone. But I want to then contrast that immediately with the same singer, James Morris, singing a Verdi aria that is for a bass. This is from Macbeth, Banquo's aria Come dal ciel precipita, in which he fears his premonitions of impending doom, which in fact do play out moments after this aria ends. But you'll be able to hear within this same singer the baritonal quality of his voice, and then the more bass-like quality to his voice. And you'll hear that he actually sings with a deeper color in the bass part than in the baritone part. I also want to point out the beautiful production from the Metropolitan Opera of this entry of the gods into Valhalla, particularly because we get to see that wonderful mezzo-soprano as Fricka, Christa Ludwig. Again, she doesn't sing in this excerpt, I don't think, but her acting is sublime and luminous. Please don't let it distract you from what you're supposed to be learning about bass baritones from James Morris.
der heilen sie zu.
So there, from the finale of Das Rheingold by Wagner and the finale of Banquo's Life in Verdi's Macbeth, you can hear the bass baritone taking on different qualities of sound, the same voice, but responding to the requirements of the different roles. One of the most iconic roles in all of opera, let alone of the baritone repertoire, is the title character in Mozart's Don Giovanni, the great Don Juan. And in this opera, the poor Lothario gets his comeuppance, but not before he's caused a great deal of trouble. Now, this is a standard baritone role, but lyric baritones, dramatic baritones, and even bass baritones alike will essay this part for what they can plumb out of the music in it. Now, it's interesting that Don Giovanni, unlike all of the other characters in the opera, does not have any long, showy concert arias. Now, his arias are showy, but they're not very long, and they're somewhat elusive, just like the character. That's the genius of Mozart, bringing the character to life by showing us snippets of his soul instead of whole arias of it at a time. Now then, we're going to continue to explore the difference between baritones and bass baritones with these two arias from Don Giovanni. First, we're going to step back in time to one of the greatest baritones of all time, the great Italian Cesare Siepi. He's going to sing Giovanni's Fin can dal vino from the end of the opera when Don Giovanni is just getting his party started with some wine. But you'll hear that the character is irritated and angry because of all of his amorous plans having been thwarted and the threat that's posed to him by the statue of the Commendatore having said moments before, "Hey, I'm going to come to dinner." So kind of spooky, and so Don Giovanni decides to party it off. And so you'll hear a wonderful lyric baritone, Cesare Siepi. Then we're going to hear the Italian bass baritone, Ildebrando d'Arcangelo, one of my favorite of all the contemporary singers, also singing the role of Don Giovanni, but you'll hear how much deeper and even somewhat darker the color of his voice is. The tessitura is the same. It's still the role of Don Giovanni, but you'll hear just the sound and the weight of the voice is different. Again, I say weight, and what I really mean is size. Now, you'll also see the difference between old-time opera acting, like we just saw from Cesare Siepi, and this sort of modern European take on Don Giovanni, in which Ildebrando d'Arcangelo is not only going to show off his lustrous voice, but his amazing guns.
Dal vino calda la testa, una gran festa fa preparar. Se trovi in piazza qualche ragazza, te con quella cercaverai, te con quella cercaverai, cercaverai, cercaverai. Senza alcun ordine la fantasia, il minuetto, la follia, fino alle banda fare ballare qui. Fare ballare, fino alle banda fare ballare, fino alla follia fare ballare. Il mio frattanto dall'altro canto, con questa quella amoreggia, amoreggiare, amoreggiare. Alla marita, alla mattina, alla decina deve pensare. Alla mia lista, una decina deve pensare. Sempre in piazza qualche ragazza, e con quella cercaverai. Alla marita, alla mattina, una decina deve pensare. Senza il coraggio nella danza sia, il minuetto, la follia, fino alle banda fai ballare. Alla marita, alla mattina, una decina deve pensare. Una decina deve pensare. Una decina deve pensare. Deve pensare, deve pensare, lasciati al nembe
Isn't it interesting how different stage productions, different conceptions by directors, and even just the different singer himself can bring the same character to life in such different ways? If I could be an opera singer, I would choose to be a baritone simply because I would love to be able to bring to life this next character, probably my favorite character in all of opera, and I shouldn't admit that because he's really evil. This is the Baron Scarpia from Tosca. And many great baritones and bass baritones have lent their menace to this robust part. But probably the greatest of them all was the Italian baritone Tito Gobbi, whose legendary performances of it with Maria Callas at Covent Garden have long been with us in the video realm. Thank God, because they capture a transcendent performance. This is the end of Act 1 of Tosca, an aria in which Scarpia realizes that all of his plans to both win his political machinations and have his way, whether she wants it or not, with Tosca are all coming to fruition. Meanwhile, a celebratory Te Deum is about to be paraded into the church, while Scarpia is still there thinking his evil thoughts of malice. And so Puccini's capturing the religious procession along with the almost sacrilegious evil thoughts of this man Scarpia is thrilling to the ear. And at the end, Scarpia famously sings, "Tosca, you make me forget God," and then joins the congregation in the rest of the prayer and even crosses himself. But see if you think he really loves the Lord.
Tre sbirri, una carrozza, presto, seguila dovunque vada, non visto, non vedi.
Sta bene il convegno.
Palazzo Farnese. Va, Tosca, ne tua carsa ne da Scarpia. Va, Tosca, e Scarpia che sai avrei falco della tua gelosia. Quanta promessa lei
It's a strange sensation, isn't it? Having your flesh crawl and your spirit soar at the same time. That's what happens to me, at least, at the end of Va Tosca. In previous weeks, we've mentioned how, in addition to Wagnerian sopranos and Wagnerian tenors, we actually have a category, a subcategory, that we would call Verdian sopranos, Verdian mezzos, Verdian tenors, because of the way that Verdi wrote for their voices. More than any other, well, maybe the mezzo, but Verdi really championed this sizable operatic baritone with the spinto sound like the tenors and sopranos that could cut above the orchestra while maintaining the lyric splendor of the voice. And so many baritones have specialized in Verdi, and consequently, we think of them as Verdi baritones. And many baritones hope that there's a category of their resume devoted to Verdi. So let's hear a couple of Verdi arias here. The first is my favorite of all of Verdi's arias. This is Il Balen del suo sorriso from Il Trovatore. And in this, the Count di Luna, who loves Leonora, but she does not love him, is singing about the rainbow of her smile, bringing tenderness to his heart, to which he's unaccustomed. We're going back in time again to one of the great mid-20th century baritones, another American, Robert Merrill, singing Il Balen from Verdi's Il Trovatore.
Il balen del suo sorriso, d'una stella vince il raggio, il fulgor del suo bel viso, il sole non so sguarda, cor.
There are plenty of Verdi baritone roles to which singers aspire, but probably the summit of baritone achievement in Verdi is being able to sing the role of Iago, the villain in Otello. This was Verdi's second to the last opera, so he was beyond being a master craftsman when he wrote this piece. And whereas in Shakespeare, Iago is conflicted but shaded, in Verdi's opera, Iago presents his full malice in the monologues to the audience, including his sacrilegious credo, in which he espouses his faith in all things villainous. This is a marvelous performance of that aria by probably the greatest Verdi baritone of them all. I know I'm given to superlatives, but I use them actually with intention, and Cheryl Milnes truly is the greatest Verdi baritone of them all. Because he's not afraid to make his voice sound ugly when he needs to, and to put some snarl in it. Sometimes he'll even just not sing the notes for a second because he's giving the full rein to the evil of the character. But that's part of what being a Verdi baritone is being able to go that excessive, over the top, just enough. And believe me, you'll feel smarmy after hearing this from Cheryl Milnes. So you can hear that not just any lyric baritone could sing that aria. That requires a Verdi baritone, someone with that spinto to thrust the voice above all of the orchestra in that way. If you ask me who's your favorite baritone, off the top of my head, I would say Cheryl Milnes. But if I thought about it for a moment more, I would have to add in there as a first place tie the Italian baritone Piero Cappuccilli. This exquisite voice also is a Verdi baritone, a voice of great dimension and color. And like Cheryl Milnes, this man is an extraordinary actor. This is one of baritone's favorite arias because it has so much variety. This is from Giordano's Andrea Chenier, a French Revolution story, in which this character, played by Piero Cappuccilli, sings the aria Nemico della Patria, enemy of the country, enemy of the fatherland. And in this, he discusses his political philosophy, why he's against the tyrants that he's against, and what he's going to do to try to stop them. In our world, I'd say vote. In his world, he's going to sing an aria about it so splendidly that I'm going to let this aria be the end of our talk for today, because I want you to just hear, if you have time, the 3 full minutes of an ovation that this performance earns. See you next week for basses and countertenors, and now enjoy Nemico della Patria, sung by Piero Cappuccilli.
Nemico della patria, e vecchia fiamma che beatamente ancor la veda il fuoco. Nato a Costantinopoli, straniero, studia sensir, soldato, editore, che di Borie un complice e poeta, soffertitor di cuori e di costumi. i cuori destar delle genti e raccogliere le lagrime dei vinti e sofferenti, fare del mondo un panettiere, gli uomini immutare e in un solo bacio, e in un sol pace abbraccio tutte le genti amar, e in un sol pace abbraccio tutte le come il cuore